Okay, well, welcome everybody. So glad to see so many people here. And there's people on Zoom. We've got it streaming live on Zoom at the same time. So I'm Xenia from Alexa Real Estate, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Angelo, also from Alexa Real Estate, who's going to be talking about analysis for profit. I've known Angelo for a long time. I'm also married to him. So I know him really well, and we both run Alexa Real Estate. Now, Angelo's run several businesses. He was a buyer's agent before he stepped into the other side of the selling process, selling properties. We've been running Alexa Real Estate now for about 17 years, so lots of experience from both sides of the game. And being my husband, I can tell you that he's absolutely anal about numbers and getting things right. So without further ado, please welcome Angelo.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So just a bit of background. So I was a buyer's agent for about 7 years. At that time, it was important from the point of view of acquisition to be able to get the numbers right, to be able to know that we were buying properties at the right price. And for the last 13 years, I've also been running the sales division at Alexa.
Can you stand there?
Yeah, I will in a second. Yeah, the sales division at Alexa. And again, it was important to understand the pricing of properties to know what we need to sell it for as well, right? So pricing has been important to me for the last, say, 20 years. What I want to do today is I want to talk about what pricing is, not just the numbers, but what it actually means, what it is that defines pricing. Because the better idea that we can have about that, the better idea we're going to have with regards to knowing what to buy something for and knowing what to sell something for. And by the time of selling something, knowing how to sell it in a way that's probably going to maybe get a better outcome as well. The title of the talk is Property Analysis for Profit. And I guess the first question is this: what is property analysis? Because there are different forms of property analysis, okay? And I want to go through three of them. One of them I'm going to talk about primarily. The first one, which I'm not going to talk about primarily, but I need to mention, is the property analysis from the point of view of analyzing areas and projected future growth, okay? That's one form of property analysis. And this is Metropolitan Adelaide here. Now, the best way to understand this is to understand how a city is built. Now, if you look at how a city is built, basically, let's say you start from a village. What will happen is that there'll be people that will be living in the village in houses, okay? People continue to move into the village, and then what happens is there are more and more people. Eventually, there comes a point where infrastructure has to start coming in. And so what will happen is highways, freeways will start coming into the place, and they'll start building these highways. What happens then, once the highways are in the place, what happens next is more people start to come because it becomes a lot easier. And I think it's important to understand now when we talk about the building of a city, that we take, for example, Adelaide compared to, say, Anglevale, okay? Now, the geographical location between Adelaide City and Anglevale isn't as important necessarily as the time it takes to get from Adelaide City to Anglevale. For example, let's say, for example, we had all great spacesuits, right? And we wanted to go for a picnic to Mars. It takes about 7 months to get to Mars on conventional spaceships, right? But if the speed of travel changed and we're able to travel to, say, the speed of light, it takes 5 minutes to get there and back. If you were to ask people, do you want to go for a trip to a picnic to Mars? People are going to look at it and they're going to say, I'm not going to go for a picnic to Mars if it takes 7 months to get there. But if it takes 5 minutes, then the attitude changes. So too, that when you start putting infrastructure in and you start putting highways that make it more easy to get to a place, all of a sudden that place becomes in more demand. So what's happening is from the 30-year plan that came out about 10 years ago, there was a big push to make housing a lot more affordable in South Australia. One of the things they did is they opened up massive tracts of land in places like Anglevale, Manapara, Bucklands Park, and you've got the freeway that can now go into that area. Now, a few things to talk about that. First of all, just to put this into perspective, the amount of land that they've released up in those kind of areas is about 5 times the size of what there was in Mawson Lakes. It took about 20 years to fill Mawson Lakes, okay? So there's a lot of land there available for new housing and stuff, right? The reason that I don't want to talk about this type of property analysis is it can often be fraught with danger. And I'll only give you 2 examples of areas that people thought that were going to take off really well, and didn't quite come off. Okay, and if you were to have invested in those areas for the pure purpose of having stronger capital gains and better growth, you would have not been in necessarily a better position now by doing that than investing in any other area. So that's why I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'll give you these two examples. And the first one's Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide, about 10, 15 years ago, they were talking about the Newport Keys project. Now, the Newport Keys project, at that time when they were talking about everything that they were going to do there. They were talking about potentially putting a tram line between the city and Port Adelaide, right down the middle of Port Road. Okay, they started the Newport Keys project, and then what happened was they started building the houses, and they had different stages. After they started building the house, maybe leave it on the corner and someone can get it later. All right, once they started building the houses, the next stage that was going to come along, when we were talking about building how a city is built, the next stage that was going to come along was major infrastructure in the way of shopping centres. Harvey Normans were going to go in there. But before that happened, the GFC hit. And when the GFC hit, all of a sudden, the project pretty much ended. And that project has now been stagnant pretty much since the time that ended then. Another example is Christie's Beach, Port Noarlunga area. There was a lot of talk about Christie's Beach and Port Noarlunga. And what happened then, again, is initially they had that bright idea of having that freeway that was one-way traffic going to the city in the morning and in the afternoon going back to Christie's Beach, Port Noarlunga. But they said, okay, we're going to duplicate the Southern Expressway, which was a good idea. And when they went to go duplicate the Southern Expressway, everyone thought, okay, this is going to start to open up the area and make it easier for people to get into. But then what happened at about the same time that they finished that duplication, they rezoned a lot of Christie's Beach and Port Noarlunga about that same time. Now, the issue with that, when you hear about duplication of expressways and you hear about rezoning, you think, fantastic, the area is going to start moving, there's going to be a lot of development, it's going to start happening. The problem with rezoning such a massive tract of land in the they rezoned all of Christie's Beach and Port Noarlunga. The problem with rezoning all of that all at once was that all of a sudden the supply of property went right up. Well, the supply of property went right up. The demand may have gone up as well at the same time because of the duplication of the freeway, but because the supply went up at the same time as well, again, it didn't do anything. So everyone had these great ideas about Port Noarlunga taking off. Christie's Beach and Port Noarlunga taking off, Port Adelaide taking off. The reason I don't want to spend this is going to be the end of this part of the presentation. The reason I don't want to spend time on that kind of property analysis is it can often be fraught with danger, okay? And you can make predictions about things that just won't come through. Who predicted the Ukrainian war a year ago? And it's gonna, if it keeps going, it's gonna end up changing things around the world as well. Okay, so that's that. What we are going to talk about is property analysis from the point of view of number crunching and technical property analysis to understand what something's actually worth. The reason that that's important is if you're trading property, if you're going in there to actually make profit out of property, there are two things that are the most important things: the entry and the exit. How much you buy it for and how much you sell it for in the end. They're the two things that are the most important. And the way that you're able to best estimate what you should be buying something for is to know exactly what it's worth. And we're going to be spending a fair bit of time on that. What we're not going to spend too much time on is another form of property analysis, which is the feasibility studies. This was one of our clients had a place in, she was living in Sydney. She needed to fully renovate this place. We renovated it for her, basically did all the number crunching and stuff for her. Took it from what it was to what it became in the end, right? Now, with the feasibility study, the reason I'm not going to spend too much time on that either, and we'll have a quick look at a feasibility study a bit down the track. The reason I'm not going to spend much time on that either is because in the feasibility study, the one thing that's most important to understand is what is the property worth at the time of purchase, and how much is the product, if you're developing, what's it going to be worth in the end? The other stuff's easy. If you want to know how much it's going to cost to build a house, go to the builder and ask them how much it's going to cost to build. You want to know how much it's going to cost to demolish the house, ask the demolition guy. You can fill all of that in the spreadsheet. As long as you've got all of the stuff that you need to put in there, the feasibility will come out accurately. But the thing that's the hardest thing to do is to predict what you should be buying the property for and what you should be selling it for. And that's why we're going to be spending all the time here, or a lot of the time, going through this analysis here. Now, okay, so what we'll do is when we start talking about this, what I said before is we want to start talking about what the idea of price is, okay? And I need to define what price is, so we're really clear on that. So we do have a better understanding of, like I said in the beginning, what to buy for, but in the end, what we can change to be able to make the price a higher price at the point of sale, right? So let me explain it this way, and I want to explain what price is in the context of real estate. This here is a toothbrush, okay? And this here is a cheeseburger Happy Meal. Now, these two things have got something in common, okay? And what they've got in common is this. Each of those things have a fixed price. So if you go to Coles and you want to buy that one of those toothbrushes, you're going to pay $2.10, not a cent more, not a cent less. If you go to McDonald's and you want a cheeseburger Happy Meal, you're going to have to pay $5.45, not a cent more, not a cent less, and it's a take it or leave it proposition. That's very different to real estate. Because with real estate, if I was to tell you that property is in Lockleys, it's at 120 square meters, and it's a 700 square meter block of land, right? If I was to ask you guys, how much is that property worth? I'd probably get about as many answers, different answers, as there are people in this room. Because the difference between the toothbrush and the Happy Meal is that a property doesn't actually have a fixed price. It has a range of acceptable value that a market is prepared to pay at a point in time. And this is a fairly significant point to understand, because the reason that Coles and McDonald's can pay $20 an hour for someone to sell their products is because the prices are fixed. The reason that a real estate agent will be paid a lot more than that is because the price isn't fixed. And the implication there is that there is something possibly that can be done to be able to alter where the end price ends up being, okay? And we're going to be talking about that. Before we do, what I want to do is I want to first of all explain what the market is, because I said the market will have a look at the properties and there'll be a range of acceptable pricing. Well, what is the market itself though? And I think the best way to describe what the market is to this example here. Just imagine a bunch of people immersed in a soup of factors that are affecting how they're going to behave in their decisions. Now, when people go to buy a property, they're not thinking about things like, oh, what's the land tax implication on this? They're not necessarily thinking about that, right? What happens is that land tax exists and it affects people in different ways, right? And that group of people there are affected by factors such as land tax, capital gains tax, negative gearing. They're affected by interest rates. They're affected by inflation. They're affected by how willing the bank is prepared to loan. They're affected by recent sales as well, how they view something and what it's worth, the recent sales. They're affected by a myriad of factors. And these people, this group of people are sitting in this soup of factors that are influencing their behavior and what it is that they're likely to pay for something, okay? Now, the reason that that's important is because this group of people that are looking at, say, a house are influenced by these various factors, right? The reason that that's important is because they are influenced, there's a predictability. The people, the group that's looking for this thing are looking at the property and they're behaving in a predictable way. That's essentially the foundation on which appraisals are built. Because if there wasn't a predictability in how these people behave, then how can you actually predict what a new property that's coming on the market is worth? The only way you can predict it is to look at past sales, how people responded and how they behave to that, because those past sales are essentially a reflection of the psychology of the market at that point in time and what someone's prepared to pay for it. Okay, and that's essentially the foundation of what the appraisals are built on. The reason that this is important is that down the track, we're going to look at a factor, and the factor is how a property is sold, to see what can you actually change about that to be able to alter the end sale price, okay? But before we do, let's talk about the fundamentals of what an appraisal is. So if you can see that there's two parts of an appraisal. There's an objective assessment and there's a subjective assessment. I just want to make sure I see this and I don't miss anything out. Okay, there's an objective assessment and there's a subjective assessment. Now, when let me ask you this question. If your life depended on having an appraisal that was done correctly, would you ask a real estate agent that's just finished year 12, got their certificate 4, and just started to sell property, would you ask them for an appraisal? Or would you ask a valuer that spent 4 years at uni studying valuation? Who would you pick to actually do the appraisal for you?
That's if you're buying or selling a house.
No, but if your life depends on getting the right answer,
Yeah.
The valuer.
you pick the valuer. There's an implication to that. The fact that we can all look at it and say that there was probably a valuer that's going to do a better job. The valuer is not, if it's a guaranteed bank valuation, they're not going to be inclined to have to try and inflate the price to get the job. Okay. The guaranteed bank valuation, there's someone who actually spends all this time, 4 years of study to know how to appraise a property. And so the implication to that is that there's a particular way of being able to assess property, to understand how to appraise property that's better than other ways potentially. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a methodology of how to assess a property that's very similar to what valuers do. And we're going to go through that methodology because it's probably one of the more reliable ways of being able to look at a property and say, okay, this is what it's worth, okay? Is there any chance you can get them to turn an air conditioner
Off.
on? Yes, and there's some cool there again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to, like I said, there's two assessments. There's an objective assessment and there's a subjective assessment. Let's talk about the objective assessment first. There are three, let me go back one step. If you go to appraise a property, okay, you can look at a whole range of factors. You can have 10 comparable sales and you can say of those two, and you're comparing it to a property to see what the value of that particular property is, right? You can say, well, what's the quality of the carpet? What's the quality of the walls? What's the quality of the kitchen? What's the quality of the bathroom? What's the yard like, etc., etc. You can end up with 50 different parameters. And by the time you start to look at all those parameters and say, well, which one's more important than the other, it becomes extremely confusing. The way the valuers do it is that they use 3 key figures, right? And then they superimpose it with a subjective assessment. The 3 key figures, the first one is the equivalent building area. Now, I'll explain what an equivalent building area is because it's not actually the building area itself. And the best way to just describe what an equivalent building area is this. Assume that you've got a house with a footprint of 10 meters by 20. So it's a 200 square meter house, right? Now, the building area is actually 200 square meters. But now let's assume that that house has 10 by 10 meters of living space. And for some reason, they had 10 by 10 meters of garage. Okay, which they're not going to do, but for the sake of the exercise, let's go through that. Now, you can't say that if you take that 200 square meter house, you can't say, well, it's only 100 square meters because it's only living, and disregard the garage, right? You can't say, okay, it's 200 square meters of living because it's not actually 200 square meters of living. It's got 100 square meters of garage as well. Okay, so they have to make a compensation. They have to normalize the data. This is the number that the valuers actually use. When they go in there and they're measuring everything up, this is the number that they're actually using. So what they do is they say, okay, 100 square meters of living area, then you got 100 square meters of garage. How do we normalize this data? How do we make some sense of that? So what they'll do is if it's a garage under the main roof, and it's an enclosed garage under the main roof, they'll apply a 66% compensation to this. So the building area might be 200, but the equivalent building area is 100 plus 66, so it's 166. If it's a garage under the main roof, but it's got a parapet wall, so it's got brick at the front, but it's got no wall on the side, they apply a 50% compensation to it. So now it's 150 square meters of equivalent building area for that 200 square meter block, the house. If it's a garage under the main roof, it's a carport under the main roof, but it's just got those wooden little sticks holding it up, then it's a 130 square meter equivalent building area, okay? The reason they do that is because what they're doing is that when they look at a property, they want to try and figure out the value of, what they'll actually do is they'll be comparing its equivalent living area to all the comparable data's equivalent living area. We're going to go through an example here, so it'll start making sense. Equivalent living area is so important because it defines what's architecturally possible. You can't have 100 square meters of equivalent living area and 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and 2 living areas. It's physically impossible to do it, okay? That's why equivalent living area is so important. That's why it's one of the key factors. The land. Why is the land important? The land is primarily important because if you have, for example, a 650 square meter piece of land, and you're comparing it to a 700 square meter piece of land, okay? And you're in a zoning that allows for subdivision down to 350 square meters, that land, that extra 50 square meters is important because it now allows that 700 square meter block to be subdivided into 2, whereas a 651 can't be subdivided into 2. So that's why the land component's important. It defines what can be done with the land. The second thing that's important is the age of, although the third thing that's important is the age of the dwelling. Now, you take this with a little bit of a pinch of salt and you have to apply it when it needs to be applied, right? But I'll give you an example of that. Which one of these properties do you think would be worth more? Okay, assume they're next door to each other. You've got a 120 square meter house on a 700 square meter block. One of them was built in 1920, and then you've got the same size house, same size block, one's built in 1942. Which one do you think is worth more? It would the older one, because one's a bungalow with character, one's built during the war period, where there was an austerity period and they were rationing the materials. One's a better quality of build, assuming that they're of a similar standard inside. The bungalow will always win hands down. So if you guys want to get a sense of building area, of building types, go to the Alexa website, go to resources, and there's a page called Adelaide House Styles. It's really important because certain types of houses were built during certain periods. Between about before the 1900s, it was all cottages. 1890 to around about 1910, symmetrical cottages. It's like no one had a brighter idea to build anything else. Up to 1920, all bungalows. You got about 1930, Tudor styles. You got about the 1935, you got the Art Deco, you got the Dutch gables. These are certain styles of houses, and they just built that. Right now, 2020, between 2000 to 2023, now all rendered Hebrew stuff. That's today's style, okay? But the age is important because depending on what kind of style it is and how much character it has, it may be worth a lot more than something of a different era, okay? All right, so there's an objective assessment, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to go through this. We're going to do 2 examples. I don't want to spend more than 20 minutes doing these examples because your eyes are going to end up glazing over, right? So we'll do, the objective assessment is the number that gets spat out in the end, okay? It's very difficult to lie about that number. But then you've got a subjective assessment that has to be superimposed over that objective assessment. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say you've got 10 pieces of comparable data. Each house is 120 square meters. Each block is 700 square meters. They're all built about the same time as the property you're looking at, which is also 120 square meters of house, 700 square meters of land. Exactly the same as these comparables, right? If those comparables that you're looking at are rated at about an 8 out of 10 in quality, and they're saying that this house that you're looking at, based on a size, land component, and age, should be worth about 500,000, but it's rated at a 5 out of 10. You have to make an adjustment based on the quality of that house. And if you say that it's going to take about $30,000 to get that 5 out of 10 property to an 8 out of 10 property, then all of a sudden you have to take that $30,000 off and probably take another $10,000, $20,000 off the time and trouble of having to fix it up as well. So although the objective assessment might say it's worth 500,000, after you've overlaid it with subjective assessment to see the quality of it, it's probably worth about 450, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so let's look at an example here. Let's take a look at this property here. It's in Carolta Park at 1C Gordon Street, okay? This property here was built in 2014. It's on a land component of 230 square meters, and it has an equivalent building area of 108. They're the main pieces of data that we're going to use, okay? Right now. And we're also going to take in bedrooms and bathrooms into consideration in a second, but for now, they're the main pieces of data we're going to use. You pull up everything that's sold in Carolta Park in, say, the last 6 months or so, all of this stuff comes up. There's about 80 properties that come up, but you can't use all that data because this property that we're looking at 1C Gordon Street is a ground floor home unit only, okay? So there's no point in comparing that to a house that's 200 square meters on a 900 square meter block. So what we need to do is need to start removing the data. So then our next thing I said, okay, find me all units, okay? That's in a similar type of category. Then we ended up with 47 units that came up. But again, now we can't compare a ground floor home unit with a level 2 unit, two-story level, a unit on the second story of a multi-story complex. It's not a comparable either. So what we need to do is we need to now continue to refine to find properties that are ground floor home units that are similar in size, similar in age, similar in land component, okay? And we end up finding these properties here, which are starting to get closer matches, right? And there was about 10 of them or so, right? What I've done to make it easier, and this is what I would suggest you do as well, that once you, if you're doing this, and now just one more thing, let's take one step back for a second, okay? To get access to the databases that give you all this information is about $3,000 a year, okay? To take the time to do this is going to take your time as well. But I can tell you, not doing it and paying 50 grand more for a property that you need to, that you want to buy is far more expensive than not doing it. So it's probably worth doing this and doing it properly, okay? Anyway, these were the properties here. Now, if you look at these properties, they're all ground floor home units in Carolta Park that sold in the last, say, 6 months or so, and that's what they are. But now we've selected something even closer to that. What we can see is that some of that data, again, isn't really right either. And if we take a closer look at it, what we'll see is, for example, this one here at 14 Broughton is 87 square meters in size and was built in 1926. So really, I don't think that's a comparable piece of data. So that has to go. You get this one here, ground floor home unit, again in at 3/20 Daly Street, 63 square meters in size. That's not a good comparable either. We're trying to compare apples with apples as closely as possible, get the data that we're selecting to match the comparable with the property we're trying to figure out what it's worth, right? And so there was about 5 of them that had to go. Now we ended up with something that's actually far closer to the type of property we're dealing with. And if you start looking at that, all of a sudden what you see is, okay, the first one with the price of it was 453. But then after those next remaining 4 were 540, 530, 508, and 512. We've now got a tighter band of property value we're starting to work on now. But then we've got that difference between that 450 and those other 3. There's consistency with the last 4, but that top one there, you can see is quite different. So why? Why is it so different? Well, it's a similar type of property. The difference is it's on Anzac Highway. It's on a busier road. And then these ones here are in the heart of that suburb. So let's get rid of that one as well. Okay? And what you end up with, and once you've got those 4, those tight comparables now, what you're able to do is work out the averages of the equivalent living area, equivalent building area, the year, the land, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, right? And they're all 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and the 1 car space for these comparables. And the average is 99 for equivalent building area, 1997 for age, and about 180 square meters for the land component. Now, when we look at that, we're getting closer to being able to figure out what this house is now worth, okay? But there's one piece of data that's going to be critical in all of that we've just seen, and that's this guy here. 1B Gordon Street is the house that's directly adjacent to 1C Gordon Street. Same age, same size, same land component, almost exactly the same. When you look at all of these other ones here, you see that it comes out to an average of $522,000, right? When I know that this property compared to these comparables here Well, I know that the property in question is a little bigger. I know that it's a little newer and the land component's a little bigger. And I know that 1B Gordon Street sold for 530. And I also know that the data of when 1B Gordon Street sold about 4 months ago in the market is still moving up a little bit. It's probably fair to say at that point, if this is what the objective assessment's looking at, and we can then subjectively say that, okay, all of a sudden, we know that this house is a little better and a bit more time has passed since this one here sold, I'd be saying about 540, 550 is probably what it's worth. Does that make sense? Okay. So that there gives us a rough idea of what that particular property is worth, right? Now, we run into issues now when you start to do the, and we're coming to the end of the number crunching, all right? So just bear with me. You come into issues when you start doing this here, when we start being really ruthless with the data and just throwing a whole bunch of data out. What ends up happening is you end up with 4 pieces of comparative data. That's not a lot to be able to draw an opinion off of. That's one of the issues of being too aggressive with how you select your criteria. If how you select your criteria, let's say, for example, we look at the Gordon Street being like this, right? If we said it's 108 square meters of equivalent building area, if we said we're going to look for 98 square meters to 118, that's the criteria we're looking for in comparables. We go to the database, we say, okay, I want a property that's either 98 square meters to 118. The age, I want it to be 2010 to 2020. I want the size to be 200 square meters of land to 260. If we tightened up the criteria that much, we'd probably get no comparables. So the reason that you need to do an objective assessment plus a subjective assessment is once you've got the data, you'll get what you can, but then you have to eyeball it and start to figure out, okay, there are certain, this property is better than these ones for this reason or for whatever other reason. Okay, does that make sense? Nick, you're on? Yep, okay. All right, now I want to talk about something else in a second. We're going to go back and we're going to reassess that same property in a different way, okay? That's actually going to give us more comparable data. So before we do that, we're going to ask the question, when you're looking at when you're doing the comparables, how far back do you go to select the comparables? And the thing is, it depends on where you're at in the market. Because this is the Adelaide market since 1971 and how the Adelaide market's grown for 50 years, okay? So it started about $10,000 here and ended up with about 700,000 plus up there, right? Now, here's the thing. If you were looking, let's say you were here and you want to do an assessment to work out the value of something, and you're about this point here, and let's assume this was Corolla Park, okay? This was the median growth for Corolla Park, okay, not Adelaide. If it didn't move, if the market didn't move in about 4 years, you can almost go back 2 years to select the data. Because at that point, you've got consistent data all along the way. But here is completely different. This was during the COVID period. At that point there, any data you get is going to be old data, no matter what you do. Because if you look at how much growth happened in that 1 year, it went from around about, let's say, 490, let's say, to about 660. It went up by, in 1 year, about 150,000. Now, 150,000 divided by 4 is how much? 150,000 divided by 2 is 75. Divided by 75 divided by 2 is roughly about 38. Ballpark figure, right? 38. The reason I've divided it into a quarter is because by the time someone has got their pen and said, this is how much I'm going to buy it for, and the time the property settles and it gets recorded on RP data, 3 months have passed. In that market, the market's moved up by $38,000. That's why that data's old. So what you have to do is, if you're in that period and you see the market moving like that, you have to forward project. Subjectively, you have to look at the data that you get and say, look, it's old data. We need to move it forward a bit as well to know what the true value is. Because if you're basing your assessments based on that data and saying that's what it is, but the market's moved ahead, you're never going to end up buying a property. Because you'll always be behind how much it's actually worth. Okay? All right. So, next way that you'll assess that same property. Now that was at 1C Gordon Street, okay? That's where 1C Gordon Street is here. Okay. This here is what Carolta Park, that's the suburb of Carolta Park. Now, everything we looked for before was in the suburb of Carolta Park. But the thing is, I know, and we'll explain this a bit more, but I know that Marston has a similar pricing to Carolta Park. I know that Ashford also has a similar pricing, North Clinton has a similar pricing, and Keswick have similar pricings, relatively speaking, give or take some, okay? So what you're able to do is you're able to then do a radius search instead. See, what that does is that it allows you to spill out into other areas and start capturing more data from these other areas out here that are of similar median home price. And if you do that, you're starting to get more data that you can actually work with. We did that. Basically, that's the property again. These were the properties that came up. Now all of a sudden, we ended up with all of these properties here. Now, if you have a look now, and when it came to the criteria we were picking, we weren't quite as stringent this time, okay? Because we wanted to get more data. But the point is this, when you take that radius search and you put it onto the first one we did, the average price here was 520,000. The average price there was 522,000. But now we've got a whole lot more data that we can work with. Now, granted, on average, the house, the number of bedrooms were 2.5 and the number of bathrooms were 1.1. But again, subjectively, you're able to then look at that, compare it to your property that you're looking at, and then formulate an opinion on price. And again, you're going to be about 540 to 550. Does that make sense? Okay. What I want to do now is let's move away from the numbers so we don't fall asleep, and then start to look at something else we need to consider as well. Now, before I do, let me make one more comment about the radius search, okay? When you're doing a radius search, you have to be extremely careful that the property that you're looking at is not in a suburb where the radius then crosses over another suburb where the pricing is completely different in median price. And I'll give you an example of that. Prospect and Kilburn are adjacent suburbs. The difference between Prospect and Kilburn is about $250,000 in median home price. If you went to the northern part of Prospect and you did a radius search and you included Kilburn as well, you're going to get the wrong answer of what that property is worth. So you have to exclude that. If you're going to do a radius search, the best way to do it and to have it the most reliable is ensure that the neighboring suburbs have a similar median home price. That'll be the most protection you can give yourself when you do that, okay? That's where different suburbs have different pricing. But there's also another issue when you're doing these type of assessments where the same suburb can have different pricing across the suburb. And the time this happens the most is along the coast. So you got an example here of Hendy Beach, okay? Now, let's not talk about the Esplanade here. Let's just talk about this band of houses around here. That's about, I don't know, 100, 200 meters away from the Esplanade. That band of houses here is going to be worth a whole lot more than that band of houses here. So if you're going to do the assessment on properties and getting comparables, what you can do on the database like RV Data is you can get a drawing tool. You can actually draw around here and you can say, just give me the properties that have come up in there. If you do that, then what happens is you avoid the trouble of having to actually try and use comparables that are outside and of a different value in that suburb. One of the biggest examples of that is Taparoo over there. Taparoo, the quality of housing, the kind of housing you get on the western side of Victoria Road compared to what you get on the eastern side of Victoria Road is completely different. If you're using comparables and you say, I want all comparables in Taparoo, and you're predominantly getting values, let's say for some chance, you got more properties that were around here that you got as comparables, and your property is over here, you're going to undervalue your property. Okay, so we have to also be mindful of the nature of the suburb and if there's any gradient of pricing that happens across that suburb. Okay, let's take a look now at a real life example of something. This is a property I think is on the market now, and this is one in Christie's Beach, and it's 490 to $530,000. And let's have a look at it to see, well, what is it really worth? Okay. And we're going to go through the same type of thing that we did, but not as stringent, right? We know that that property has an equivalent building area of 99 square meters. Okay. It was built in 1962, and it has a land component, apparently according to RP data, of 666 square meters. Now, this is an important point to probably make as well, because if you go back up to that real estate ad, what it says is the land component is actually 793. And what's important to understand about RP data is that I don't always get it right. Now, I know that this was right because what I did was I went onto the database, took an aerial shot, measured the top of the roof, and I measured the top of the actual boundary, and I know that it's about 800. But RP data says that it's actually 660. If you just take that data on face value, you're going to make a mistake. So you need to sometimes check and double check things as well. If they've got a house that's got 100 square meters of equivalent building area, and it's got 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, something's not right. So always have a look at the data and start to cross-check things to make sure that you're not actually assuming that the data is right when it's not necessarily correct. Anyway, let's have a look at that. So what we did is we pulled up the comparable properties that were similar in age, similar in house size, and similar in block size. And what we ended up with was it actually says that on average, that kind of house is about $577,000. Now, they're asking for 490 to 530. So far it's looking pretty good. So far, everything seems to be looking okay. But if you have a look at that aerial shot on that property there, and this is how I knew the agent was actually correct with what they actually put down, because when I took a map, I took a measurement of the actual square meterage, it said 804, right? So her 795 was probably right. But the other thing about this particular property is that it's got a frontage of 22 meters. Now that's interesting, and I'd suggest that you take this website down that I'm about to give you here, that one up there, because what you can do is you can go to that. We can get it off me later. You can go to that website and you can punch in the address of the property. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you the zoning policy. Now it just so happens that that particular property is in a zone that allows for subdivision of detached dwellings of 300 square meters with a 9-meter frontage, or semi-detached dwellings of 300 square meters with a 9-meter frontage, or road dwellings of 250 square meters with a 7-meter frontage. So we've got 22 meters of frontage, and we've got more land than we need for 250 times 3 is 750. We've got 800 square meters. So potentially that block can be cut up potentially to 3 as well. Now, when you look at that and you say, well, okay, is it worth buying this property? Well, if they've got on it 490 to 530, and all the numbers are suggesting that on basic properties that probably can't be cut up into 3, that it's worth about 577, and you can cut it up into 3, I'd say that that's a prospect that you may want to have a closer look at. Now, there may be a reason that it's not worth that, okay? There could be an easement that runs right across diagonally here that you can't do anything with it. There could be a significant tree. It doesn't look like there's a significant tree because you can see it from the aerial shot. There could be a stony pole right here that interferes with subdivision. There could be a number of reasons why. It could be on a slope, it's a heavy slope, you need massive retaining wall. But at this point here, if I was looking at a property, I would at least now go and have a look at it and see what's the nature of that block. What's the nature of it? And actually, is everything lining up? So by being able to do the assessment, you can actually look at what's on the market, and you can then go ahead and make an assessment as whether it's worth buying or not. Now, I'll tell you this, when I was a buyer's agent, I wasn't going knocking on people's doors and trying to do shifty deals on the side to see if I could buy their property, because it wasn't necessary. Because what we found was, I'm going to give you an example of a mistake that an agent made on a particular property. All I needed to do was continue to screen properties and find properties that an agent had not valued correctly. Now I'll give you I'll give you two examples. I'll give you the fonts coming up, but I'll give you this example as well. There was a property that was a piece of land that some guy asked me to come and appraise. He wanted me to sell it, right? I went and appraised it. I looked at all the comparable data, just like this, and I said, it's worth 380, John. He goes, no, it's not worth 380, it's worth more than that. Anyway, I knew him well, and I said, look, go and get 3 other agents and get them to appraise it and see what they say. Anyway, he comes back a week later, he goes, oh, Angie, I went and had these 3 agents come in. One of them came out at 380, one of them came in at 450, and the other one came in at 520, at 250. So we had, the 381 was correct, so I ended up selling the 380, right? But then you had 2 other agents, one said it was 450, the other one said it was 250. It's a piece of land. How do you mess up the appraisal on a piece of land? The reason that opportunities are out there is because not always are properties put on the market at the correct price. And I'll give you an example coming up shortly about that. I want to show you something else as well. When you're doing the number crunching, another consideration that you're going to need to make, okay? Because we talked about the size of the house, size of the land, the age of the property, and all of these things that we can physically see that affected the value of the property. I want to show you this example here, right? Oh, the numbers are really bad. Okay. The numbers are terrible. Okay, no, okay. So there's 58 here, and there's 39 here down this street, okay? Now, I'll just quickly show you. I'll have to tell you, because you're not going to be able to read it, right? But what we know that with 58 and 39, they're on exactly the same land size. We know they're exactly the same size house. We know that the age of these 2 houses are about 8 years apart. And we also know that the condition of them, for both of them, is pretty bad, right? So you look at these 2 properties and you think, they're probably worth the same amount of money. They're about 10 houses apart, okay, from here to here. It's about 10 houses in between. But if you go back to that website that I showed you, what you'll see is that the difference between 58 Daly Street and 39 Daly Street is that 58 Daly Street will allow subdivision down to 270 square meters. Okay? But with 39 Daly Street, you can cut down to 150 square meters. The difference is you can put 3 houses on this block, and on this one, you're going to be able to put about 5. The difference in pricing between that and that one there is around about 200,000 to $250,000. And it's got nothing to do with the size of the land, the size of the house, the age of the house either. It's got everything to do with the zoning, because the zoning is something that you can't see, but changes the value of something completely. This is the example that I wanted to give you about agents not necessarily getting it right. This is one that we ended up selling. We had a client that became one of our clients. He was recommended to us after he had 2 other agents actually have a look at this block. This is in Hallett Cove at 36 Nungamore Street. So the 2 other agents had a look at the block, and they gave him an appraisal of roughly around about that 450-ish mark, around about 430 to 450. Okay. Anyway, I went and had a look at it, and I didn't know what they'd given. I ended up giving him an appraisal of roughly about 500 to 600,000, 550 to 600,000, right? And we sat down and we're going through it. He goes, well, why is it worth that much? Now, if you look at the block, it looks like a normal block, right? It's on a corner site. It's okay. It looks like a normal block. Now, the thing is, and this is going back to what I was saying about errors that RP data make, and this is probably where the other agents got caught up on this, right? What we know is that in that zoning there, you can cut a block down to 350 square meters, okay? So long as you've got a slope of less than 1 in 8. I went and measured the slope, and I went and had a look at the property as well, right? Let's just go back to that first picture here. Right. Now, if you take the dimensions, you measure up and you try and see if you can subdivide this block here, you find that you can't do it because there's not going to be enough private open space for this. But the issue was this boundary is in its correct location. By going on site, I was able to see the boundary is actually right up against the gutter line. Now, if you go and then measure up from there, all of a sudden, you got 352 square meters with private open space in the back, the frontage you require for that subdivision, and the depth you require for that subdivision. That's why it's not worth 450. That's why it ended up selling for 572,000. And if I was to bet why most of you guys are here, and I don't know, I don't want to assume anything from you guys, but I would assume that one of the reasons that you're here is knowing that sometimes real estate agents get it wrong. And if you identify something like that, you can pick it up for about $450,000. It's going to be happy days for you. And that's why property analysis, this kind of technical property analysis, is so important, because it allows you to put yourself in that position. I can tell you now, you get agents that have just gotten out of school, just done their certificate for, and they're whipping off as many properties as they can. They don't always get it right. And there's probably about 1 in 100 properties that are out on the market right now that are probably not valued what they should be. And that's where the opportunities lie. I said before, we're going to talk about the feasibility. Now, this was from a book that I wrote some time ago, so don't comment on how low the values are for certain costs and stuff, right? The point is this, that with the feasibility study, it's only limited to how much you can actually put in it, right? You have to put in engineers' cost, architects' cost, subdivision cost, land surveyors' cost, etc. But like I said last time, the most important thing to know is how much should the property be purchased for? Is 370 a fair price to purchase the property for? The only way you're going to know is to do that technical analysis. Then you ask, the houses that are going to be built in the end, are they worth $1.1 million together? You have to have the technical, you have to be able to do that technical analysis to know that. If you get that right, everything else here is just filling in the blanks. So long as you've got everything that you need there, fill in the blanks, and all of a sudden, what number comes out in the way of profit or loss is a number that's likely to be the number you're probably going to make. Obviously, when you're doing a development site, that's going to take about a year or so to build. If the market shifts, you're going to watch for that as well. But hopefully that gives you some sort of idea of the importance of the property analysis, right? Now, in the beginning, we said we were talking about what the market is. We said, well, what is the market actually? What does it consist of? We said it sits in a soup of various factors that affect what they're going to deem a price to be, right? That's important at the point of entry. Buying a property, you need to know what something is worth. At the point of exit, when you sell a property, you need to understand what that's worth as well. But in amongst that soup, is there something that can actually be done that can actually affect the price, right? And I would say that one of the things may be how the sale is actually done. Now, one of the things, and we're going to change gear here, and we're going to talk about this idea of, can a property sell itself? I've had people before talk to me and they say, don't worry about the agent, get the cheapest agent, stick a signboard on the front, the property's going to take care of itself, it's going to sell itself. So I want to explore that idea and see, well, will a property sell itself? Or is there some intervention that can be done that would actually cause a different end outcome? And what I want to do is, first of all, let me tell you a story about one of our lecturers at uni. It was a card counter, okay? This is blackjack. It's the only game at the casino you can actually go to the casino and actually beat the casino by having better odds than the casino. And the only way you do it is by counting cards and by knowing how to play the cards, right? There was a lecturer that we had at uni that was actually a card counter, and he'd go to casinos and he'd literally be ripping the casinos off to the point where he was banned from all of them, right? Banned in America, banned in Australia as well. Because he could count cards and he knew how to play the hands that he was given, right? The interesting thing about blackjack is this. Do you know what the advantage over the house is? By counting cards and being able to play the hand properly. Do you know what the advantage over the house is? It's 1%. You have a 1% advantage over the house. But the gambler knows that if you keep playing the hands, eventually you're going to beat the casino. That's how they end up winning. Because they have an advantage, a slight advantage. Just keep playing until I beat them. That's it. The question is, are there factors when it comes to selling a property that's actually going to have a bearing on what the end outcome can be, right? But let's ask the question, will a property sell itself? or is there some intervention, right? So let's have a look at a few. I'm only going to go through 10. There's more than that. But let me go through these 10 to see if there's anything that could be done at the time of sale that can influence an end outcome. The first one's the one we've been talking about, okay? How much is the property worth? If you get the pricing wrong and you go to market on a property, you're going to have problems, one way or another. So let's say, for example, let's say you've done your assessment and you say a property's worth $500,000, right? But then an agent goes ahead and puts the property on the market for $700,000. We said before that the market consists of a range of acceptable, a property has a range of acceptable pricing. Nobody is going to come to the open if the property is on the market for 700,000. If the property's on the market for 700,000 and nobody comes, you got nobody to negotiate with. So that's going to cause a problem. If the property is worth, say, about 500,000, you go into the market at 300,000, you're going to cause yourself another problem. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a whole bunch of people coming with an expectation that they're going to get a bargain. And then as the price starts moving up, is it going to even make 500,000? So getting identifying what the value of a property is before you put it on the market and being able to justify to an incoming purchaser, this is why it's worth this, is worth something. And I would say at least gives you a 1 or 2% advantage over the house when it comes to selling a property, okay? Let's put a 1 or 2% advantage on that. Let's now talk about the kind of method of sale when you're going to sell a house and whether that's going to affect something, okay? This here, I've always had an aversion to auction. And the reason I've always had an aversion to auction is that there's a fundamental flaw in it. And the fundamental flaw is that it's only as strong as the second best bid, right? Anyway, last year, we went through 20 consecutive sales we did at Alexa, okay? And we didn't just randomly pick 20 sales just to give us the number we wanted. We did 20 straight sales. And we asked this question. We asked, what was the price that was accepted on each property in the end? But then the more important question was, what was the second best offer? Okay. So what we ended up finding was that the price that we ended up on average over those 20 properties, the price that we accepted in the end was $744,000 roughly. The second best offer was $700,500. The difference between those two prices was about $43,500. Now, we'll ask the question, if this was an auction, what would have happened? What would the end outcome have been? The auction would have gone like this: 680,000, 685, 690,000, 695, 700,000. The next best bidder goes to 705. But this guy's only prepared to go to 700,000. So that's when the auction stops. An auction's only as strong as the second best bid. So this guy that would have gone another $39,000, $38,000 stops at 705. That's why we wouldn't do auction, because an auction's only as strong as the second best bid. I would say that the methodology of sale, when we're talking about those super factors that can influence price, I would say that the methodology of sale is at least a % or 2 advantage in the end outcome, the grand scheme of things. This here, we're going to talk about marketing now, okay? These here are rocks. They don't have gold in them. They don't have precious lithium in them. They're just normal rocks, okay? Now, if I was to ask you, how much would you buy this little rock for? You might give me 20 cents or 50 cents, okay? But if I was to take that same rock and put it into a nice box, put it on the top shelf at Endota Spas, and call it an exfoliating, rejuvenating rock, now people will literally pay 200 to 300 times the amount. Because the perception of that rock has completely changed. Now, and that's how you sell snow to an Eskimo. If you have any question that marketing does or doesn't have an impact, just remember the story of that rock. But remember, Apple, IBM, Coca-Cola, all of these, Microsoft, all of these companies that spend hundreds of millions of dollars of marketing, they do it for a reason. So marketing, I would suggest, is important. One of the things that we'll do, like at Alexa, and I think is important when you do the marketing, the whole idea of marketing isn't about putting a picture on and filling the space with copy. That's not what marketing is about. Marketing is about being able to change the perception of how someone sees something. Whenever we put a property on the market, our booklets are roughly about, it's the house we're selling, about 16 pages to 32 pages, depending on the story we're going to tell. Because we need to tell a story, because we can tell a story about something and change the perspective of how someone sees that property. If the perspective of how they see that property is changed, the value that they place on that property will now change as well. And if the value that they place on that property changes as well, that means that what they're prepared to pay for it will change as well. That's what marketing is about. And it's important that when you go to put a property on the market, you take careful attention, pay careful attention to the marketing, because it's so important with regards to how much someone's going to be willing to pay for something. So again, we're talking about now this soup of factors that can start to influence things in the end. This one here, open houses. Now you think, well, how complicated can an open house be? You're letting people in. Well, let me ask you this. If you're at the beginning of a marketing campaign to sell something, would you rather have 1 half an hour open per week, or would you rather have 3 half-an-hour opens per week? I'd pick one. Because if there's going to be 30 people coming to that property, I'd rather jam them in to the same place at the same time and create a sense of frenzy. Because it's a different feeling that if you're looking to buy a property, it's going to be a different feeling if you've got 30 people talking around you, talking about the property, compared to having 2 or 3 people. The perception that you're going to have of that property, the demand for that property will change completely. How you design and open, what time frame you put on it, when you actually do it, how many people you get into that thing will change the perception of how someone views that property. And the simple thing of just doing an open and how you do that open will have an impact on how someone sees the property and what they're prepared to potentially pay for it. I'd say having 30 people around you as opposed to 3 people around you at an open, it's got to be worth something. It's got to have some sort of effect, some sort of advantage over the house when it comes to the game of selling a house. The other thing as well is who's sold a place here? Right? Okay, who's sold a place? Have you ever had a situation where the agents don't actually contact you? I know your story. Okay, so but there's situations where agents won't contact the client. And here's the thing: this is the problem with a situation where the agent doesn't contact the client. And this is how costly it can be, right? You've got 5 weeks that passes, haven't heard much from the agent, and all of a sudden he rocks up and he says, "I've got an offer for you. It's a really good offer." Well, how do you know it's a good offer? Well, what are you comparing it to? Well, what feedback are you actually comparing it to know that it's a good offer? Now, it may be an amazing offer. It may be the best offer you're going to get. The problem is this: if you don't know, you're going to have an apprehension and say, well, let's wait and see what else comes. If the next offer that comes along is $50,000 or $100,000 less, and this guy goes and buys something else, it's not the owner's fault. It's the agent's fault for not informing the client, and they've just essentially lost that client a lot of money by not informing them and allowing that client to be empowered enough to be able to make the right decision. Something as simple as just updating your client can have a big impact on what the end outcome, what the end price is going to end up being. And again, I'd say give it a % or 2 advantage over the house when it comes to this game of real estate, just doing that. Following up, who's ever gone to an open to buy a place and never been followed up by the agent, right? It happens all the time because they're time poor, okay? But the problem is this: there are 3 things, this simple thing of follow-up. You think it's so simple, right? There are 3 things that are happening here. First of all, if you're not following up, you don't know what the market is actually thinking about the property. Maybe they think it's no good, but at least tell the client that this is the feedback. If you're not following up, you don't know if someone's prepared to potentially put an offer in. So you've potentially blown that. But the thing is about follow-up as well as the secondary signals you're actually sending to the people you're following up. Because if you're following up people and you're showing an active effort to actually try to see what's actually happening, the secondary signal that you're sending is that the guy who's actually doing this is actually making all efforts to get this thing sold as quick as possible. If they have some sort of intention of wanting to buy, that secondary signal is going to have an effect on them as well. That secondary signal of that follow-up and that activeness and trying to find who's going to be buying, when they're going to be buying it, when it gets sold as quick as possible is going to have an influence too. Okay. I'll talk about negotiating. I've written a book in negotiating. I would suggest that if you're going to be selling property, yeah, you want to have some sort of idea of negotiation. It's going to count for something, okay? This one here, paperwork, okay? I'll talk about paperwork now and how important this paperwork is. There are two pieces of paperwork when you sell real estate in South Australia that you have to give. The first one is the contract, and the other one is the Form 1. Okay. Now, the contract is drawn up by groups like Real Estate Institute of South Australia or the Auctioneer Society. I use the ones from Real Estate Institute of South Australia. There's one thing that the Real Estate Institute of South Australia understands about their members, okay? And that is that their members are not brain surgeons. They understand that they need to make these contracts as simple as possible to fill out. You don't want the real estate agents to have a degree in contract law. All it is who's the owner, who's the purchaser, how much do they want to pay for it, when do they want to settle, and are there any terms as well, basically, okay? They're very simple. The Form 1, on the other hand, is not so simple. The Form 1 is a document that is so easy to make a mistake in. Now, there's an issue with that, okay? Because the Form 1 is the trigger of when the cooling off period begins. Now, in the cooling off period, you have 2 clear business days to get out of the contract if you want. You don't need a reason. You can just cool off. You don't need a reason to cool off, right? Anyway, the reason that this is so important to get this paperwork right, when we do the Form 1s, I contract it out to someone else that just does Form 1s, and I know that they're going to be done right? The reason they're important to get right is this. If someone's written up on a contract, the cooling off period has passed, they've got their finance and whatever, and 2 weeks down the track they say, I don't want to buy it anymore, and they want to get out of the contract, they're not going to send the contract to their lawyer or their conveyancer. They're going to send the Form 1 to their lawyer and their conveyancer, because that's where the errors are likely to be. And they're going to send it to the conveyancer. Conveyancer's going to look at it and say, oh, there's an error here. There's a no where there should be a yes. Send it back to the real estate agent and get them to reserve it. As soon as the agent reserves that Form 1, the cooling off period begins again, and they cool off. That's the end of the contract. And if that error was done because the real estate agent stuffed up that Form 1, it's going to be an extremely dark day for that agent if the next best offer he can get or she can get is $50,000 to $100,000 less. And to put this into perspective, there was a conveyancer that I was working with, and next door to him, he had a real estate agency. And these were his words, okay? This agency actually did their own Form 1s. And he said, Angelo, 30% of the Form 1s that they put through me are all defective. Now, there's only so long you can dodge a bullet before one eventually catches you. It's important to get the Form 1s and the paperwork done right, as boring and as simple as it may be, because it's the best insurance policy you can get for someone not walking away from a deal when potentially you're not going to get anything better than what they've offered you, okay? 2 more things that I want to touch on. The open homes, right? After a contract has been drawn up. Now, who's seen the under contract stickers on things? Yeah. Now, if you see an under contract sticker on a signboard or on the internet, do you bother calling the real estate agent up to ask about the property? No. So here we go. Someone's actually bought a property subject to finance, right? The agent marks it as under contract. 3 weeks pass before the guy says, I haven't got finance. But they've had under contract on there, and 3 weeks have passed where nobody has come to inquire about the property. If you didn't put under contract on the property and you kept showing it, you could have got 3 other offers or 2 other offers, and you would have had potentially a plan B and a plan C in the event that they didn't get their finance. So putting under contract on a property is just stupid. Simple things like that are all probability events that will actually skew what kind of outcome you're going to end up getting and increase the probability of success. The final one is this thing called buyer's remorse. I'm going to talk about this in a second. But the first thing I want to say about buyer's remorse is that if someone puts an offer in and it's an amazing offer, you don't call them up straight away and say, fantastic offer, we'll take your offer, let's sign it up. Because the first thing they're going to think of is, did I overpay for it? So give them some sweat time. Give them some time to actually think that the owners are considering whatever. Okay, that's the first thing to consider. However, and I'll touch base on this in a second, right? Where we understand what it is at the point of sale that you're trying to achieve, right? Let's go to ask this question again. Will a property sell itself? Yeah, it probably will sell itself. The question is, what kind of outcome are you going to get? If you're not doing all the 1 or 2%ers along the way, what kind of outcome are you going to get? You go to auction when you should have gone to private treaty, you've automatically potentially lost about 40 grand right there. What about the other stuff as well? So yeah, a property will sell itself. You can stick a signboard at the front, you can put the letter of offer forms on the signboard, get people to fill it out, and you can pick the best one. But what kind of outcome are you going to get? Okay. Anyway, what I want to say, I want to wrap up with is this. When a property is put on the market, okay, my role when I go to selling a property is not to tell people how much they should pay. Not for me to say, Nick, you're going to pay $700,000. As soon as the number comes out of my mouth, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to rebel against it. You're going to think, wait, don't tell me how much I should pay. I'm going to pay for $650, right? I don't tell people how much they should pay. I don't try and coerce people into paying something they don't want to pay. That's not what salesmanship is. What salesmanship is creating an environment in which a purchaser can then just enter into, and there are a variety of factors that are having influence over those people, over the people that enter in there. Factors that are influencing those people in a way where the offer that they're likely to give is going to be consistent with what the owner wants. Because if you create those factors that the purchaser can enter into and be influenced by, and they can come up with their price and they can say, hey, this is how much I want to pay, and that's how much the owner wants. The chances that this is going to happen go through the floor. Because I haven't told them what to pay. They've made their own mind up on what to pay, but they've made their own mind up on what to pay based on the factors you put in place that allow them to make the decision that you want them to make. When we talked about that, the market, and how the market consisted of people in a soup of factors. The soup of factors are, like I said, the negative gearing and all of this. That helps guide people as to what they're probably going to end up paying, all the comparables. But another soup of factors is how the sale is conducted. Because if, on average, all of the sales that have been conducted, the people in the market are looking at and saying, hey, this is worth this much, were conducted in a way of a lower standard than what it could be, then the pricing that you can actually potentially get up as well. Does that make sense? And that's it. I mean, hopefully that was not boring. If it was, the bar's open. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Say somebody came to you and said, I'm looking to buy a house. And you've got houses on your books, but where do you sit in that process?
It goes on the market every time.
You're going from selling a house.
No. I'm not a buyer's agent anymore.
Right, no, okay,
Yeah.
if you were.
No, I'm not a buyer. No, I specifically, if someone comes and asks me to sell a house, it's going on the market. Because let me tell you this. A lot of agents say, I've got buyers, right? Okay. Let's say they've got buyers for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in Glenelg, okay? How many buyers do you think they've got on their list that are actually active current buyers? If you had to guess, have a guess, pick 50, 100, let's say 100, okay? Is 100 a bigger number than the whole planet once you put it on the internet and the whole planet can actually see what this property is worth? I'd rather go with the whole planet and all of the options that I get from the whole planet than the 100 people on that database. Because if you want to get the best offer, you're going to put it out to everyone. You can't just say, oh, I got buyers here that are going to buy it. What does that mean? What is it? How are you testing that property to see how much you can actually get? You're not. You're putting it in front of about 10 people and you're saying, do you want to buy it or not? And then you're going back to the owner and you're saying, okay, this is how much they're prepared to pay. How do you know that someone's not going to pay more? So fundamentally, this whole idea, it aggravates me. And the problem is, people actually, when the agent says, I've got buyers, they actually like it. They actually say, oh, he's got buyers. Well, let's go with him because he's got buyers. What does it mean?
Shortcut for the agent.
It's a massive shortcut. And not only that, it's actually a massive loss usually for the owner. Because until you put it on the market where the whole universe can see this property, you don't know what you're going to get.
So what's your opinion on purchasing off market?
Off market, what do you mean?
Things that haven't been listed.
Look, if a purchaser is silly enough to put their property on the market and not test it to the whole, and you have an opportunity to buy it, by all means, go knock yourself out. Okay, that's
Recently we've made aware of. I didn't really.
yeah.
So.
I think that for someone to do that, someone to put their property on the market and not actually see how much they can possibly get and try and do a deal on the side is fraught with ridiculous danger. But if they want to do it and you can pick it up, no problem. All the best for you. But there's no way. If someone came and said to me, can you set it off the market? You know, I'm just going to say, no, we can't. And I'll explain why you're not going to sell it off the market. I've got a database as well, but there's no way that my database would be able to match realestate.com going out to the whole planet. Any other questions?
I've got a question just to satisfy a common misconception in the industry. So you've just explained a whole lot of very articulate kind of analysis on, comparative market analysis and the size of properties and whatever. So say you have a property that you think will sell between, say, 500 and 550, but some other agent has said, no, I can get you 800. Why wouldn't, because that happens, why wouldn't you put it on the market at 800 and let them negotiate down?
Yeah, because of the pain that I'm probably going to go through. No, because of the pain. Okay. Because the thing is, if you're going to put a property on the market, right? See, let me take one step back and then I'll answer that. How many times I've been at a coffee shop and speak to someone and someone says, oh, my property's in this area here, how much will it sell for? I don't know. How am I supposed to know? How big is your house? How big is the land? Is it subdividable? Is there a stony pole in it? Is there a massive significant tree in the front of it? I have no clue. If you want me to tell you, I'm not going to shoot from the hip and actually say, it's worth this much. I'm going to go and I'm going to see what it's actually worth based on what we actually did here, right? Now, if that's what I'm going to do, and an agent says, because it happens all the time, it's 800,000, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the data of comparable data that's exactly like their property, 10 comparative pieces of comparable data that were just sold in the last 3 months, and say, this is what it says. Take this to the agent and get him to explain how he's going to get $800,000.
Yeah. So if that property has been put on the market for 800,000, is it detrimental to that vendor if it sits on the market, because it's not going to sell for 800,000?
Eventually.
So if it sits on the market for, say, 4 or 5 weeks, is that going to be detrimental?
Depends on what property it is. Houses become stale a lot faster than land. If it's a property that's been on the market, that's been put on the market, and it's been sitting there for 4 months, the first thing people are going to be asking is, what's wrong with it? What happens is that there are preconceptions that people have on a property. Often they make their mind up before they've even walked into it. And if they've already got in their head what's wrong with it, they're going to start looking for things that are wrong with it. And the simple fact of them even looking for things that are going to be wrong with it is going to help start bringing that price down anyway. That's why it's fraught with danger to not, the first one that I showed you, being able to understand what the price is worth. That's so critical, because in those early stages of the marketing, That's when you've got the frenzy of people looking. That's when you got everyone you can jam into that place and create that sense of urgency to actually help drive the price up. That guy, if he went at 800,000 on a $500,000 property, my question would be, did anyone actually come?
Mm.
And that's the damage that it causes.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's the answer I was looking
Okay.
for.
Long parts.
Thank you. Fantastic.
If anyone has any questions, I'm going to be
Um,
here for a bit.
People on Zoom, you can unmute yourself as well if you've got any questions to ask. Does anyone have any other questions? No, that was
Really related to what we talked about. Is there like a specific structure you recommend when purchasing a property?
You talk to an accountant.
Yeah.
No, that's, I mean, I can't, I'm not an accountant. No, it's like, I'm not a
Yes.
lawyer to be able to, did you ask George? I'm not a lawyer. Look, I mean, I'm not even gonna say, I know the general trend of how things go, but everyone's circumstance is different. And for me to say, you can do this, is again, shooting off the hip when I'm not qualified to do it.
Well, thanks, everyone. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, go on.
And the question also related to, directly related to, so if we, in average, can we know for how long a new property, let's say, according to the current building standards, will serve? So for example, if I need to assume that in 30 years time, I need to demolish it and reconstruct it.
You need to demolish your house in 30 years' time. It wasn't built.
It's just-
Yeah.
So
So how long a house will last for?
is
Well, there are houses that are literally were built by,
according to the current standards, if you buy a new one. then
okay. Right now, the new engineering on houses now clearly hasn't been tested, right? It's based on old facts and how they did building. They re-engineered things, right? But I would say that the way houses are built now, with the control joints, with how they design, how deep the foundations are going to be, they should last for a fair while. I mean, look, this is my preference, and it doesn't mean it's right, okay? My preference is I have an aversion to Hebel, because I know the brick has lasted since the Roman Empire, okay? I know the brick is going to last, okay? Hebel, I don't know so much how long that's going to last. I mean, it might last 100 years, but it hasn't been tested to know. So it depends on, look, if I see a house that's made of brick, modern engineering, so it's going to be here for a while, other than the fact that it's turning into my termites or something. Does that remotely answer your question? No, it doesn't really, because you don't, it depends on what the building material is, but even still, like I said, even with some,
Often built in bricks.
no. But look, all you can hope and depend on, look, hey, let me go one step back. Back in the past, they built with asbestos. They thought it was a great idea at the time. Now they know it wasn't maybe such a great idea. They're building with Hebel now, it hasn't been tested long enough. Eventually, the time came where asbestos was tested long enough for us to say, well, okay, maybe it's not so good. But Hebel hasn't had that testing in time. Those modern materials haven't had that. Doesn't mean they're not going to last a long time. They might last 200 years. But I know the brick has lasted for thousands of years. No, there's no direct answer to that. Yeah. What else?
What websites are you using for that?
RP data. Use RP data. That's where you get all of the raw data from. And this is the thing with RP data. You can give RP data to 10 different people and they may give you 10 different appraisals. The reason I went through this methodology is it's the one that's probably the tightest one to be able to give the more accurate type of results, right? Get your RP data is going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000 a year. The other thing as well, that website that I showed you, be sure to always check what the zoning is on stuff. There's a website there. Check the zoning as well. And you know what? Thank God the state government took over the planning the way they did, because the old development plans you get from the council were just a nightmare to try and navigate through. Now you just have to put the address in, scroll down, click a couple of buttons, and oh, here it comes. This is what the zoning is. Now, there's obviously a bunch of other stuff you have to consider as well. Like you have to go on site, you're gonna make sure that there's no significant trees on the thing. You're gonna make sure there's no significant trees on your neighbor's block. Because if there's significant tree on the neighbor's block, it may impede development on that site. No, you make sure there's no easements, make sure there's no stobie pockets, make sure the slopes aren't gonna affect development as well. All of these things need to be considered. But the thing is, if you take the time to learn all of this, it's not gonna take you more than 3 months, really, right? But if you take your time to learn all of that, you may save yourself $100,000 error. I'll tell you a story actually. This was an error that we made. No, I'll never make it again. Okay. We bought a property in Croydon. And I'll tell you this so you can ask this question yourself, right? We bought a property in Croydon. I went to the council and I said, "Oh, can this be developed?" They said, "Yeah, here's a development plan, no problem. The property could be developed." Anyway, it just so happened that on the day of settlement, they changed the zoning. And the question that I didn't ask, that I should have asked, and forevermore, to the day I die, I'll be asking, is there a development amendment review? Are they looking to change the zoning? Now, luckily, we sold it and we got our money back. But seriously, what are the chances of buying a place, having it settled, and then the zoning changes on that same day? So all of if it didn't, the bonus here.
How much time do they normally allow if there is going to be a change in zoning like that?
Well,
Like, do they give you a bit of a period of grace, or is it like?
no, that's cut. That's it. It was
Mm.
cut. The day that it settled,
Mhm.
I called up the council and I said, "Okay, look, we want to start getting the development on the way." He goes, "No, you can't develop it.
Yeah,
Zoning just changed."
that was one of our personal properties.
No,
Yeah.
good story.
That- that all takes-
Is that the same site where you can double check the size of the block compared to if the listing agent has got it wrong? Is
No,
that where?
I'll go to RP data.
Oh, that's
No,
happy data.
in fact, no. If you really want to make sure, you go to the Lands Titles Office. Lands Titles Office, you get the title, and it will actually say. And sometimes you get these little wacky dimensions on things. Once you've got the title, you call up the Lands Titles Office and say, "Hey, look, can you do a
That's where
measure?"
you double check.
100%.
If the agent has got it right.
The most definitive verification of size is always the Lands Titles Office. 100%. The agent might have got it wrong, RP Data might have got it wrong, Lands Titles Office never gets it wrong. Very rarely will they ever get it wrong. They do it sometimes. Yeah, well, it's very rare, but it's the closest thing you're gonna get to accuracy.
Thank you, everyone. We'll close it here, but feel free to ask any more questions to Angelo directly. Thank you.